Hey, there's a downy woodpecker. Just landed on the suet
Oh,
feeder.
yeah. Nice. The birds are loving the feeders these days.
Yeah, they sure are. Yeah. So despite the fact that a lot of our birds have gone down south, somewhere warmer for the winter, where they can find better food, we still do have a lot of residents that stick around through the winter.
The birds that do stick around are well adapted to live in colder climates. It's the lack of food that oftentimes forces a bird to migrate. And it is nice to be able to feed those birds throughout the winter. Let's face it, there are far better feelings than sitting inside where it's nice and warm with your hot tea or hot cocoa, watching the birds outside at your feeders.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about some of the tips and tricks you'll need to help keep your neighborhood birds fed during the winter.
Welcome to NedTalks. So why do we want to feed birds in the winter? Well, birds do need to eat in order to stay warm. They don't necessarily grow a winter coat that's thicker like mammals do. It's a lot of fun for humans to do, honestly. It's a great scientific endeavor, and it's accessible to almost everybody. The birds that do stick around are seed eaters. The insectivores, the ones that eat insects, are usually the ones that fly south for the winter because insects aren't as plentiful in the winter.
So now that we know that our winter birds are seed eaters, there's a couple different ways we usually offer seed for them. The first type of feeder that's pretty common is a tray feeder right here. So it's open on the top, it could have a roof on it as well, but it's basically a large tray to just dump your seed in. Now you want to make sure you have drain holes in your feeder so it doesn't fill with water and the seed rots, and you also want to make sure it's in an open enough area that these larger birds like blue jays and cardinals can come in and sit on the feeder to eat. Our next type of feeder above me on the right here is a cage feeder. These are pretty popular as well, and they work really good for larger seed. Anything that's pretty small that you put in there is just going to fall out of the holes, but the big things like black oil sunflower seed, which is in this one, stay pretty well in the cage feeders, and are smaller birds that like to cling on the sides of things like woodpeckers, chickadees, and nuthatches like to hang out on these cage feeders. Beside the cage feeder on the left here, we also have a suet cage. So you can fill suet cages with pre-made suet blocks, which are pretty well available at hardware stores or wherever you get your bird seed. And suet is a mixture that contains a lot of protein. So there's a lot of woodpeckers, nuthatches, and more clinging birds that like to hang on the sides of things that'll pick at suet. There are a lot of other neat and innovative ways to feed your birds too, but we'll end today with the classic tube feeder. So these are very, very popular. These are what most people have. It's a tube that holds seed and it has solid sides. So you can use small or large seed in it, and they usually have perches like this one does too. So the bird can come, perch right on there, grab its seeds and leave. A lot of tube feeders, a lot of the smaller birds will visit too, just because they're generally smaller, and it might be hard for something like a cardinal or a blue jay to sit on that little tiny perch and get seed out.
Now that we've decided what kinds of bird feeders are available, let's talk about seeds. So the type of seed you choose to feed will determine what kinds of birds you see. For example, something like a goldfinch doesn't have a beak that's able to crack tough seeds like sunflower seeds, so instead you're going to want to feed something like thistle so that they can eat it. When you go shopping for bird seed at the store, you'll probably find a lot of different mixes, a lot of individual bags, so we'll just walk you through what you're going to see here at the center if you come out to the bird blind. So for some of the larger birds with the beaks that are able to crack them, sunflower seeds are really great. They're also a great source of protein. You're going to have cracked corn appear in a lot of the mixes. Again, the larger birds are going to like that, as well as your squirrels, unfortunately. You have safflower seed. Again, high in protein. You probably see a trend by now. And then you have millet, which is going to be higher in fats, and they're the tiny little beige seeds that you're going to see in your mixes. Like I said at the beginning, goldfinch, smaller birds that aren't able to crack seeds with the heavy shell, they're going to go after things like the thistle instead. Something you definitely want to stay away from is Milo. It's a filler that a lot of seed mixes are going to have, and it's just that. It's just something to kind of bulk up the seed. It doesn't have any nutritional benefits for the birds. The last feeder that Hunter mentioned was the suet cage. So suet is a mixture of fat and seed, so it's very high in protein and fats for those birds.
So now that we've discussed a little bit about the types of bird feeders you can use and the types of seeds to feed in the winter, we'll leave you with some tips and tricks to help you out in your bird feeding. First of all, placement of your feeders is going to be pretty important. You don't want your feeders to be out in an open field because a lot of birds like cover or somewhere to escape to, but you also don't want to cover up your feeder with bushes and trees that it makes it hard for the birds to get in there without seeing what's going on around them. So you want some trees or bushes or something like that to be nearby but not on top of your feeders. So if there's one issue or complaint that bird watchers have about their feeders, is going to be squirrels at their feeders. So there's a lot of different DIY solutions to keeping squirrels away from your feeders, but I think the number one simplest thing for your hanging feeders is to use a squirrel baffle. And lastly, we just want to keep in mind that we are feeding birds to supplement their diets in the winter. We're not trying to replace their diets. So that being said, you can have a lot of success at your bird feeders and see plenty of birds without going out there and loading up your feeders to the brim every day. If you just keep it to a moderate amount of seed on a set schedule being put out in your feeders, you can see just as many birds because they'll still come for the food.
So we hope that now you feel well armed in your knowledge to go out and feed the birds in your own neighborhood.
If you're a first-time bird feeder, we wish you the best of luck. We hope you see a lot of birds, and if you've been feeding birds for years, we hope you're able to pick up on something new.
Thanks for watching our Ned Talks. Happy feeding!